where they need to be and lead more healthy lives. So please take advantage of this opportunity. I welcome you and I'll be more than happy to work with you. Now, moving on to our final panel discussion, how time flies when you're having fun, right? It's on the importance of sharing stories panel. And this panel is going to be hosted or moderated by Jamie Imhoff, who actually is a dual donor, a double transplant recipient from Hopkins. She received a life-saving liver first in August, followed by a kidney August of 22, but followed by a kidney in March of 2023 after 7 months of being on hemodialysis. She has a strong recovery as an AUD Delta program individual, and she advocates for patient education, daily health and fitness, and a purpose-driven lifestyle. Ambassadors to several organizations, and in her free time, she loves to paint and donate life rocks. Hopefully she'll tell us a little bit about her rock painting. I thought it was a terrific story. Jamie, take it away and enlighten us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say this has been a fabulous presentation and summit. So I hope you all have learned a lot of great information. I certainly have. Don't go anywhere yet, because this is going to be a very good panel. You know what? I got up this morning. I want to share something. So this was the first thing that came on my Facebook. So I want to add this real quick. Give me 1 second here. Okay. Look at this. Okay, let me just put this down so you can see me. It was from donatelife.net. Okay. If you can see it, it's important that there's someone out there that needs to hear your story. Okay. Now let me explain why that's so important a little bit. In my introduction, they mentioned something that I'm an AUD transplant. So guys, I have a very powerful, controversial story. There in liver transplantation, there's something known as the 6-month sobriety rule. And back in 2022, most centers in the nation still adhere to that. So if you didn't have 6 months of sobriety and you were very, very sick as a liver, you were turned away to die. Pretty simple. Now, Hopkins, in a program with NIH called the Delta program, was taking on individuals to break that controversial rule and that rule, because they proved that it has no bearing in transplant. It's only stigma based. And right after my transplant, before my kidney, they actually asked me, they picked me in particular, even before, I didn't even have 6 months of sobriety, still afterwards. They picked me to do a podcast. And that podcast went out. It was called Drinkers to the Back of the Line. And because I decided to share my story, despite the controversy and the opinions, my story got out there, and people who didn't have a chance in other states heard it. And they reached out, and one individual spent thousands of dollars on insurance, a family, to come specifically to Hopkins because of my story that saved that person's life and that family. So it's so impactful that the little difference that our stories can make, into just life or death even. So that's kind of why, beyond that, I want to bring up this panel. So anyways, I'm going to go start highlighting some of these speakers here and give you their introductions. So first of all, today on the panel, we have Larry Jones. Hi, Larry. Let me give you your introduction. So Larry Jones, AKA LJ McCoy, is a former college athlete, retired insurance professional, and a kidney transplant recipient who received a life-saving kidney from his son on May 4th, 2023. He didn't tell you this, but from Hopkins, after battling end-stage renal disease. Now a dedicated advocate for kidney patients, he volunteers with the National Kidney Foundation, the American Kidney Fund, and Infinite Legacy, using his experience to raise awareness and support for others. As an author of Are You Kidneying Me? My personal experience with kidney disease, he shares his journey from diagnosis to transplantation, offering encouragement, guidance, and while residing in Maryland, having raised his 2 adult children who now live independently. Our second panelist is Joanne Crocker. So I'm going to add her. Okay. So, hello, Joanne. Joanne Crocker is a devoted wife, mother of 8, and a grandmother who was given a second chance of life through liver transplantation in 2019. Grateful for her bonus days, she dedicates her time to volunteering as a pre-liver transplant liaison and a friendly visitor at the hospital, offering support to patients in need. Her journey of survival and gratitude has inspired her to help others, honoring her donor by living each day with purpose, as I spoke of earlier. Joanne's story is a testament to the power of resilience, kindness, and the incredible impact of organ donation. And our other panelist today is Suzanne Ruff. So we're going to add her. Let me find her, sorry. Joe, I may need help. Okay, thank you. Suzanne Rupp, hello. Okay. She is an award-winning author of The Reluctant Donor, a memoir detailing her journey to becoming a kidney donor for her sister and her family's long battle with kidney disease. A former writer for the Charlotte Observer, she has dedicated over 2 decades to kidney advocacy, serving on the executive board of the American Association of Kidney Patients and contributing to the National Kidney Foundation's Living Donor Executive Council. She continues her advocacy through research, volunteer work with organizations like the PKD Foundation and PCORI, helping to improve kidney care and transplant accessibility. Thank you all for being here today. Okay. So I sent out some questions earlier, and I'd like you all to respond to them, and I will call upon you. But one of my first questions was today is that in reading all of these great bios, okay, I can see that you're all part of health and transplant organizations. Can you all individually speak on how that has impacted you and others in your journey? I will let Larry go first.
Okay, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. This is a very informative panel, summit, major information. So in response to your question, this kidney disease thing, it kind of hit me. I was blindsided. It hit me by surprise. I had no idea that I was sick. And I went for a annual physical and found out that my kidneys were functioning below 15% and that I needed a transplant or dialysis to survive. So I went from not knowing anything to being on dialysis. I was not aware of any of these organizations, who to reach out to. And, the journey began. So my vow was, if I survived this ordeal, that I wanted to make sure that patients who are going through similar issues would know that there are people out here that understand your problem, that are going through the same thing that you're going through. And also, again, volunteering for the National Kidney Foundation, the American Kidney Fund, and Infinite Legacy to try to, be a cautionary tale for those who are still healthy to avoid this, in my opinion, horrific fate. So that's my story in trying to get, to advocate, to get the story out, to say, hey, you're not alone. And if you're still healthy, here's some things that you need to be aware of to avoid kidney failure.
Thank you so much, Larry. Joanne, would you like to input as well?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me here today. As I was introduced, my liver transplant, not kidney, but liver, was almost 6 years ago, August 16th of 19. And I was days away from a totally different outcome. Anyone familiar with MELD scores? Mine was 47 the day of my surgery, and I should not be here by any scientific means. But I wanted to be able to pay it back and pay forward. I had a lot of survivor guilt. I just, it helped me to help others. So I just asked at the hospital, one of my many trips there, you know what, I wished I'd had somebody to talk to that had just been through it, you know, not the doctor, not the coordinator, that I could ask the questions that I wouldn't ask the doctor or the coordinator, but just, you know, am I losing my mind? Is this normal? Like anything. And that led me to become a pre-liver transplant liaison at the hospital. And I visit patients and call them. It usually starts out with a phone call where I talk to them if they already have given permission to their coordinator to have me call. And then I reach out to them, and we form bonds, we form friendships. You know, I'm there the whole way through to getting them listed, to through the transplant, after the transplant. I'm still in touch with everyone I've talked to since I started in 2001. But you know what, I don't help anybody more than it has helped me, because again, like I knew I could not have changed the outcome for my donor, but try telling that to my heart. So this has helped me. It's helped me see a purpose of why I was spared and to pass it on. So, anyway.
Thank you. That's a fabulous answer. You're right. It helps me too. You know, more, I think sometimes more than people.
Mhm.
Well, so Suzanne, would you like to elaborate on that? Suzanne,
Yes.
would you like to elaborate on either what Larry or Joanne said?
Well, I'm in the same boat as all of them. We all are together, and I've really enjoyed the panel today, and thank you for inviting me. And I will be honest though, I hated everything about the word kidney growing up. My family has been haunted by a hereditary kidney disease for the past 80 years. So I didn't just jump right in to become an advocate and to be, I pretty much ran away and hid from the word kidney and the word disease. Putting those two together made me sick to my stomach. But there have been 11 transplants to 10 different people in my family, 6 deceased donors and 5 living donors. I was the first living donor over 20 years ago. I think it's been mentioned before social media, before any contacts, the way we can do now with Zoom and things like this. So I felt all alone all those years ago. But in my family, if your parent carries the gene for the disease that we have, as Jim Myers knows, it's the same disease, polycystic kidney disease. And he is obviously, I could just sing his praises, but because he's in there with me fighting against this disease. But if a parent carries that gene, the child has a 50% chance of inheriting the disease. So over 30 family members in my family have inherited that gene. And some of the people I love most, and some have died of this disease, including my mother and one of my sisters. So you add all that up, and with me being the only child of my parent not to inherit the disease, my mother was the youngest of 6 children, and 5 of the 6 inherited polycystic kidney disease. And if I could put each one of those people on a timeline, each of their deaths would show a significant progress made in the treatment of disease. So the fact that that I was the only one of my mother's family not to inherit the disease, it carried a great responsibility to me to grow and to give back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I actually do believe that we have a little bit of a responsibility to share, and especially share for the future. So I appreciate those answers. Now, you know, writing is a very powerful tool. And I won't proclaim that I'm a big writer or anything, but I do love to share on social media. If anyone knows me, I'm huge on that. But for some of you on this panel here, I did notice that you are writers, and I would like to talk about what you have done with your writing. So can you please tell with us, how have you used writing to share your story or your message? And I'll let Larry go first.
Okay, sure. Just to give a little background, which I kind of mentioned a little bit before, I became aware that I was in end-stage renal failure in March of 2022. And I began dialysis in May of 2022. And fortunately, I received a living donor transplant from my son exactly 1 year later in May of 2023. I like to say that I gave him life, and 32 years later, he gave me my life back. So I wanted to, I feel very fortunate that I had sort of a short time period with this disease, finding out that I had it and being able to have a transplant in a year late, in exactly 1 year later. I was truly a blessing. So I wanted to chronicle my experience over this time period. So again, I received my transplant in May of 2023. I began writing my story while everything was still fresh in my mind in September of that year. But I wanted to tell this story. I think, as Joanne kind of mentioned in her story, I wanted to tell it from a patient's point of view because there's so many technical terms, and there doctors and things like that. But uh, you know, I had no idea about the drugs or even what I was receiving in dialysis. So I wanted other people who were kind of caught off guard to kind of be able to read a story, take your time. If you're sitting in that dialysis chair for 3.5, 4 hours, to just sit there and read a little bit of it, a little bit at a time about what it's like, the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations. In my case, there are more ups than downs. Um, but while it was fresh on my mind, I just wanted to chronicle and record this experience, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, um, the grace that I was shown, the patience, just wanted to get that story out there. So I guess it was, cathartic for me, and hopefully it will be hopeful for other people, and they can just kind of read my story in layman's terms.
Thanks so much, Larry. So before I move on to Joanne, and we'll put it in the chat, but you did write a book and it is available on Amazon. Am I not correct?
Yeah,
Right?
it's on Amazon.
Okay.
It's on Barnes and Nobles. It's called "Are You Kidneying Me? My Personal Experience with Kidney Disease." So it
Excellent.
goes from my prognosis to transplantation.
Okay.
So it basically covers about a 3-year period of time.
Okay. Well, congratulations. Thank you so much. We'll go back to that in a little bit, but I will go to Joanne next. So elaborate on writing for you.
Absolutely. I'd like to write a book. I have not. I don't even know how to start, but I just wrote Larry's down. I'm going to get it and read it. So thanks. But for me, I would say that my writing really started when I was trying to write a donor letter for the first time to my donor family. And I had asked my surgeon, how do I go about thanking my donor family? And he gave me the information for CORE. I reached out to them and they gave me instructions and helped, and they in turn mailed the letter. So it's all anonymous unless that donor family wanted to write back and let me know who they are, but it all stays anonymous. But when I reached out to them, I also became an advocate. And I'm very, very, very proud to represent CORE and work with Colleen, for Colleen. And the letter was the hardest thing. Like, how do you thank somebody for saving your life at such a horrific expense? Like, I didn't know where to begin. And then once I began, it just kept flowing. And I would wake up in the morning, and I think, when you're journaling, like the first thing in the morning, that flow writing process before you really had time to think about your day or look at your phone is priceless, because it just kind of all follows through. And then I have the opportunity with CORE to not only share the importance of donation and give donation awareness, but also to share my story and help people that are going through it not feel alone, because community is everything and not feeling alone is everything. And it can be a very lonely experience mentally, but I have shared in front of different um, different audiences, whether it's a flag raising or celebration of life at the hospital or for other groups. And so I have tailored speeches from anywhere from 3 minutes to 8 minutes to 17 minutes. Like I have them all. And that makes it flow right here, and it makes me able to improve everything that I'm writing. So I keep it fresh. That's my story.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Actually, as somebody who has two different organs from two different amazing individuals who were deceased, writing my letters to them, I wrote to both of them, was very cathartic and helpful. And it actually took me an entire year to get it on paper, but I wrote it in my head over and over and over again. And then one day I just sat and wrote it. So I definitely recommend, even if you don't send it, please do write it.
Oh,
Yeah.
can I add one quick thing? I'm sorry. And I know from my experience, I've written every year. So I've
Yep.
written 5 letters so far. I never write in the month of August, like it's always different time. But it, I keep my thoughts and I keep letting them know just how grateful I am. And it can be like your donor families always want to hear from you and know you're okay. It might take a while, or they may never be able to bring themselves to write back. I know that. I'm hoping mine will, but I know that. But that also helps the whole writing process too, is putting my thoughts on paper every year for them, because it's a big deal. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yep, same thing here. Absolutely. Next, Suzanne, please. I also saw that when I introduced you, you wrote a book as well. I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, if you asked my sister, the one I gave my kidney to, she would tell you that I have always loved to write, and I'm always writing, and I always have my nose in a book, and writing is something I love to do. But a newspaper story is very exciting for me to interview someone else and find out what they're thinking or thoughts on whatever subject or newspaper article that I was writing. But to publish and write my personal thoughts for other people to read, that was not something I ever thought in a million years that I would do. But because of what I went through trying when I was struggling to find the courage, because I have zero courage, that when I struggled to find courage to become a donor, I reflected on the past and the role models in my family who battled polycystic kidney disease. And they had great courage and they had incredible humor despite suffering. And they were my role models, and their stories should never have been forgotten. So I started writing down their stories so that my sister's daughter has inherited the disease now. So I didn't want the fifth and fourth and fifth generation of my family to not to know the stories of the people before. And so I started writing that about kidney disease in our family for them. And I was in a writing group because I like to write. So I was in a group that said to me, we learned so much from your personal stories about your family, about organ donation, kidney disease, what's involved when someone wants to be a donor or needs a donor. And there was a woman in the group that absolutely would not ever sign an organ donor card because of all the reasons a lot of us know all the time. You won't be dead when the doctor takes your organs, all that stuff. And when I finished writing all the story, she came to me when I had a book launch and she said, I signed an organ donor card in the event of an accident or a untimely death. So I guess I never in a million years wanted to publish that book because there's a scene of me on the toilet in the hospital after donating, and who wants people to read about that? But after this book has been published, to think that people from the Netherlands would send me an email thanking me for writing the book is more humbling than I've had emails from the Netherlands, from London, from Canada. People ask me to put the book in Spanish. It just to know that what you are, each one of us on this call and on this panel and this whole morning have gone through, to tell your story helps somebody else more than you will ever know.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. As much as I'd like to give a detailed presentation on how to get a book published, I think that we can put an email from those who have, anyone can reach out for advice. But what I'd like to ask each one of you is, what advice would you give someone, especially new, okay, to help them get started with either sharing their story or sharing that they may need to find a donor, or if they have a message from their unique transplant or something, or they want to share that, but everyone might be a little bit nervous or uncertain. What advice would you give them to help them do so, or even enhance doing it? I'll start with you, Larry.
I would say you have to start with humility. You know, you got to let all your pride and privacy go, and you just start writing, and then you edit it along the way. And you want your story to be relevant, but you've got to start. You know, it's like journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So don't worry about being perfect. Just be honest. And I don't know. In my case, I just feel like a spirit came over me and just started writing for me after a while. So that's my recommendation.
Thanks so much, Larry. I absolutely agree with that. And don't hesitate to leave out the dirty details, as I call them, because transplant is not pretty, and neither is organ failure. So I agree with you. Joanne, would you like to elaborate on that?
Thank you. Yes, I would. It's funny because I just was recently asked to share my speech with someone who's having trouble writing one that they're going to be sharing during Donate Life Month. And how would I start? Just no matter what your past is. C.S. Lewis said, you can't go back and change the past, but you can start here and create a new beginning. Never too late for a new beginning in your life. Just write from the heart. And then, what are you grateful for? What are you grateful for that you can do now that you couldn't do before? What are your milestones now since your transplant that, you've been able to accomplish that you wouldn't, that in my case, I wasn't going to be here to see my grandson, who's only 2.5, or to help my daughter plan her wedding, or to to actually officiate my father's celebration of life ceremony, the whole thing. Like I would have missed it all. And so I share that part because it's important, and it puts, it adds the personal part to it. But just, what can you do? And I fell in love recently with the Latin phrase semper gratis, which means always grateful. And that's how I try to live every day in my life since my transplant. And I share that too. So that's kind of where to start with the writing. Just what are you grateful for that you have now that you would have missed?
Absolutely. That's wonderful advice. I love that saying. I definitely want to move to Susan. Do you want to weigh in as well? So advice. Yeah.
Sure. There's a quote that I love to say, if spring is dancing in the hills, don't stay in your dark little corner. And that's how I feel about anyone in this world that's the world of organ transplantation. Don't stay in your dark little corner. Reach out to others. Find inspiration from someone who is further along in the struggles than you are, and learn from them. And then when it's time to give back, do so. And just there's always someone who I remember my mother when she started dialysis. She said she was so upset and so scared, and she looked out the window, and a man was being escorted into the dialysis center by his granddaughter, and he was blind. And when he got into the dialysis center, he greeted everyone with a cheerful, booming voice, and he sat next to my mom, and the nurse was hooking him up to the dialysis machine, and he took his artificial legs off so he would get, and he said, I'm trying to get comfy for my couple hours here. And he turned out to be my mother's best friend, and she said he taught her everything, how to look at life with joy. And if you're in that position and you want to write, and look for somebody like that to be your friend and join a writing group. I always say that that's the number one thing to do if you can. And that's my advice.
Thank you so much. This is where I have to give a little plug out to our wonderful Kidney Stories Toastmasters Club and why you should join. Only $10 a month, because the more that you share your story, the more you'll get just confidence and charisma and all of that. So the more you get to practice, the better off that you will be. So I highly recommend doing that here. You'll hone in your skills. But I do want to go back and touch on what Suzanne said and give Larry and Joanne a chance to answer. What inspired you, or did someone else as an inspiration along the way, you know, even if you were right after transplant or something, to put your story out there more? Go ahead, Larry.
Well, for me, dialysis was a place that I thought I would never be. I thought I was interacting with people tri-weekly that I thought I would never meet. And so the woman who sat next to me had been on dialysis for 27 years. She's still on dialysis. And, I came into dialysis as a reluctant, sad, disgruntled person. But this woman was sitting next to me, taking these needle sticks without even flinching, and she had these coloring books. She just had a wonderful personality. And there was a guy that sat next to her every morning. My session started at 6:30 in the morning. Again, I'm walking in with my chin in my chest, and he would just say, "Good morning, Mr. Jones." And I was thinking, why are these people so happy? This is the worst place in the world to be. So I looked at that, and then there were other patients who did not survive. And I thought, if I survive, I've got to tell this story. I mean, I just feel like I'm one of the chosen ones who basically regained health. I'm healthier than, I think I've been in the last 20 years. And so I just want to get this story out. I want people to, obviously, if they can, avoid this disease. But the other part is, life is not over when you have kidney disease. It's just different. And if you look at it from that point of view and stop feeling sorry for yourself and start reaching out to others. So that was sort of my inspiration. Those people really helped me snap out of this gloom and doom and do everything I could to, qualify for a transplant. So,
Larry, so this is why we share stories, because real quick, I remember at dialysis now, there was this older woman who came in and she just didn't want to do a transplant, but she would come in dressed up to the nines, like she was going to a fashion show or a church service. She would wear furs and all of that. And we asked her one day why the rest of us coming in looking like we'd been run over by a car. And her, why did you do this? And she goes, well, this is the one time I'm going to go out during the week. So I'm going to look pretty while I do it, especially here, and I will never forget her, and so we can also relate to each other in sharing these stories. So I just had to insert that one. But Joanne, go ahead and tell us what inspired you or inspires you or anything. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, well, I did write that letter to my donor family, was probably the first thing, but then I also put a book together for myself, kind of a photo journal of just inspiring things that got me through that whole 2019 year, and kind of helped me never forget, helped me, all of it. It was just very therapeutic, and there are a lot of things in there. But one thing that was inspiring that you just made me think of was that I had been asked, I was in the hospital for the third and final time that year of 19 when I had my transplant for 2.5 months. Now, it wasn't because of my transplant, it was just how sick I was prior. But one of the things I had to do in occupational therapy was to write something with the box of colored pencils and paper that they had given me. And that was September. And then I went back with my daughter to volunteer for Donor Day, February 14th of 20. And my paper was still hanging up on the bulletin board. And I recognized my handwriting, but I had no recollection of what I wrote. Like, I mean, I don't know who wrote it. It didn't seem like it was me, but it said, always keep your heart and your eyes and heart wide open. The surprises we have in our lives and the love we will feel from strangers are so amazing, even in what seems to be the darkest of times. Always keep the faith. The smallest gesture of kindness and love makes such a difference in a stranger's life. Now, I that's what inspired me to use it to pay it forward and everything. That paper was still hanging up months later. 1 month later, the world shut down. What a message that was. And I just thought, I just need to keep going. And I've just been journaling. As I said, I don't know how to write a book, but I'll figure it out. But thanks.
Well, on that note, thank you so much. And again, if anybody has any questions or interest in writing a book, I'm sure that Larry and Suzanne won't mind if you reach out for any guidance on getting started or how they did it. But this has been a fabulous panel. We've definitely done our time here. I'm going to turn it back over to our host. And I want to thank you so much, all of you, for sharing your stories with us today.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and to all your guests on your panel there. It was really great. Well, folks, we've come to the time we're going to wrap it up here a little bit, but I want to thank you all for attending our virtual transplant summit. We greatly appreciate your time and your engagement, and we hope you find